I hate the term passive income. In my experience, there's not much income that's truly passive. A lottery or an insurance claim might qualify, depending on the details, but past that, I've never known any income to be passive. There are ways to get income for the work you're doing, and there's ways to get income for the work you've already done. I had a coworker once that said you can pick berries or you can plant berries, but you can't just have berries. So when people ask me if I'm looking for a passive income from writing books, I always feel awkward. What they're really asking is if I'm planting berries, and sure, I'm definitely open to the idea of a book going super viral and making me enough to get by for a bit. That's not passive though. It would take going to bookstore and author events and doing readings and talking to those that read my books. It would be more work than a typical job, and it would probably still pay less. But that's more to do with the disconnect between what people see and what really happens. They only see that the money comes in from Amazon without my swiping a credit card or tendering cash. They think that means it's just magic. But it's not. It's me planting the berries that someone else picks, and then we share. There's a similar disconnect when people talk about not needing God to do good. I get what they mean. They see the scandals of priests and the corruption of politicians all intermixed with crosses and life verses and understandably say, "Those crosses didn't help," or "Those life verses didn't help," or whatever other things are used as badges of belonging to the Christian club and say, "Therefore, God didn't help." That's always the problem with badges of belonging though. Not just to church, to anything. You see that guy driving down the street with a bunch of flags, be they American or Pride, and what he's really saying is, "I'm one of you, my people. You can trust me." And then, when the smoke clears, sometimes you can and sometimes you can't. This is where the debate about open and closed communion often comes into play. Even if, like me, you don't attribute any metaphysical significance to eating and drinking a small bite and a half a sip, it is at the very least a personal declaration that you declare yourself to be one of Christ's people. Sometimes people do that dishonestly, and this is to their personal detriment, and it is to the detriment of the church community. When they get caught in their lies, it makes us all look bad. On the other hand, priests and such that have been designated the gatekeepers of these symbols have also fallen to scandal, selling access to liars and denying honest adherents access because they can't pay. I'm not here to tell anyone how to thread that needle in any particular church, just to say that I recognize the complexities involved. This is why I'm always pointing out that I don't worship crosses or life verses or priests or politicians. Pointing out the latest political scandal with a politician that had a cross on his shirt doesn't impress me. I never trusted any politician, cross or not. I never trusted any priest, life verse or not. Just like when people talk about passive income, they too often end up importing too much. Often when people say that they don't need God to be a good person, they often end up importing too much. They end up saying, "If you don't know what's right and wrong, you're just a bad person," or something to that effect. If that's the case, we're all bad people. Over and over, things that feel intuitive about morality end up not being so simple. Anyone that's been friends with both parties in an ugly divorce can attest to the complexities. Anyone that's watched someone care for a spouse for years through mental and physical decline only to give in to temptation in the last few months before losing them knows that these questions get complicated. How much does it matter that one spouse owned a thing before the marriage? How long do we expect a loving spouse to be lonely without comfort? It's not always such an easy answer. There definitely is something to our idea of right and wrong, though. Something real. I finished reading Tom Holland's book Dominion the other day, and I find it interesting that worldwide morality has bent towards the West. Even before reading that book, I used to joke with people that if we had taken our morality from any other religious tradition, then slavery would still be the law of the land everywhere. Everyone that pushed for the permanent abolition of slavery either got the idea from a Christian or was a Christian. That doesn't mean that the abolition of slavery has remained in Christian countries, though. People in other religious and legal traditions have seen the prosperity, happiness, and advancement that giving universal value to all people brings, and they want a piece of that. This is one of the things that I find most compelling about the Christian religion over other ways to pursue the divine. The intellectual end of the Christian religion is focused on finding the right moral answer, not just manipulating the invisible forces of the world to fulfill our whims. Have others discovered these truths outside the Christian religion? Certainly. But they do so by looking for the same thing that Abraham, David, John, Augustine, Aquinas, and Lewis were looking for. Whatever that thing is that we've all been looking for when we try to do right, that's what we call God. That's what we worship. Whatever it is, it's the necessary ingredient to doing good. Those that claim to do good without that, in my experience, are just like those using a life verse or a cross to declare themselves to be with their people, except then it's the atheists. Similarly, to claim to do so by pushing away all of the centuries of study on the subject by those diligently seeking it is a recipe for pride and manipulation, which are the opposite of what we've all found the good to truly be. When you see that our contemporaries get it wrong, do better. When you see that they've faked their worship of the true and right and beautiful, worship the true and right and beautiful better than they did. That's when I'll think you're serious. And that thing you're reaching for behind all that is the same thing that Abraham and David and John and Augustine and Aquinas and Lewis and me have been calling God all along.